And we are live. Welcome to Hacking Business Technology. I'm Matt Hooper, and I'm here with Farah. Hello, Farah.
Hello, everyone.
Boy, it's been like so long since I've been on the podcast.
I know, and I think this is the first time it's you and I in a like dynamic duo edition or something.
It will go down as the smartest podcast. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, Mark. No, I'm kidding. It's great to see you. I haven't been on since before SITS. You guys did a great job covering SITS. Of course, you had pretty much every fact wrong about the show.
Pretty much. Yeah, you got that text. Thanks.
Yeah, but no, it was good. London's a great place to be, and what really fascinates me about London is that when you talk about a strong community, and ITSM is so small even to begin with, right? I mean, it's just such a tight community. And in the UK, because they're a fairly small country land-wise, like they get together on a fairly frequent basis. Now we'll see each other. I think probably the last time I saw you was Tennessee.
Yes.
Yeah,
oh my
so that was 2013, right? So I mean, even though we talk to each other almost every week, we don't physically see each other. And in the UK, these folks will get together and have like this. The British Computer Society will have something, and they all come together. Then there's SITS, and then there's a few other kind of major events that happen throughout the year that they will all get to, and they will see each other 4 or 5, maybe more times a year. And I think that's really cool. It builds a lot of camaraderie, and I think that it's a tight group. So going there as a Yank, it was kind of cool because you got to see all these folks interact with each other, and I really don't think that I ever saw Stephen and James Finister at the same time, and I never realized, and I'll have to post a picture or something, I never realized how much they actually look alike. I'm sorry, James. But, no, it was good. It was a lot of fun. So I love being at SITS, and then I spoke at Gartner in the Orlando conference for their IT operations management, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail later in the show. But it was a good conference, but it wasn't great, and I want to cover some of that. But
yeah, I mean, we're very curious, and so it would be nice to have some of your insights, reading some of the abstracts, and kind of, we were talking about what are the modern day service desk type service management folks discussing here.
Yeah.
At the conference.
But before we get into all that really good stuff, I want to get into something really great. You sat next to a YouTube developer on a plane. And so tell us about that. I mean, because that's going to be a pretty cool job, right?
Absolutely. So I was sort of really excited. I think I probably borderline weirded him out with my grilling and questions. And so it was very interesting. So I was on a flight back from San Francisco last night, and really nice guy. He was actually on his way to vacation, so I probably ruined it further for him because I'm talking about work while he's getting ready to go and jet set to Brazil. But anyways, so I just asked him like all these questions around culture, around being a programmer. What is it like to be do you feel constrained by processes? Have you heard of change management and release management? I mean, I totally dived into everything. And I think if I could summarize it, it was really interesting. So in the beginning, he said, no, I think there's a place for these processes. It's important. I mean, he didn't know what ITIL was, but when I said Scrum, he kind of nodded. So that was interesting. DevOps, he nodded. And so when I started saying ITIL and service management, just over the head. But when I started speaking about release practices and change, that resonated. So that was one interesting observation, right? So they're doing this stuff. They don't know what it is, right? And in the beginning of the conversation, he said, yeah, no, there's absolute value. By the middle of the conversation, in the examples he was giving me of, well, yeah, you want me to write a story, and yeah, I'll write you a story, but I really just want to get my work done. I was like, there, I caught you. I caught you. You
That's
don't
right.
like it. You're just doing it for the sake of doing it. You don't see value. You just want to get shit done.
Yeah. They didn't get it. He didn't get the ramifications of not having, decent requirements mapped out and getting buy-in for what it would actually do.
Exactly, exactly. So then I started like probing him a little bit further, and I said, how do you as a team in your product team, I mean, how do you maintain quality? Are there rewards in place for, not introducing defects into the environment? Do you even measure that? Are you guys told how that all works? And kind of got into some of the things that we've all been discussing on this podcast. So what was interesting is he said the team is very much self-managed. He goes, in fact, we've had people who have quit, not necessarily quit, but self-selected themselves out into another team because they were like, I can't keep up with either, in terms of kind of the work-life balance aspect, or whether it was with the demands and the expectations around quality. He goes, they will opt themselves out. So it's not necessarily you are, that was one interesting aspect. The second thing he said to me was that, they kind of, they give each other a hard time. They hold each other to that standard. He goes, they know that if you introduce code, it's a pride thing. You don't want to be the one who's told that you had a bunch of severity 1 defects in the version of the package that you just put out, right? And so he goes, we keep ourselves in terms of our team kind of culture accountable for making sure that we maintain quality. And so in terms of performance, he goes, really what we're measured against is making sure that every quarter we have things to give. We have things to release. We've taken something to production. And the most dire consequence everyone always knows in the back of their mind is if, you got a bunch of these Sev 1s in the environment, you're probably just going to be fired.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think that's a pretty legit level of accountability, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it was refreshingly black and white.
And you think about that from a management perspective, how hard it would be to manage that from a position of someone who reports to somebody else, because that we've gone through that, right, where we've said to the developers, well, we're going to bonus you for how many bugs you fix, and then you get the gamification of them introducing bugs and then them fixing them, right. And then you say, well, it's we're going to hold you hard for any bugs that are introduced, and the next thing you know, they slow down. But from a peer perspective, it really is a personal challenge, right, and it is a reputational challenge. So I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And for all of our listeners out there, I mean, keep in mind, so he belonged to a product team that looks or manages, if you will, the videos of those people the profiles of those who upload videos, right? So people like you and me are uploading every day. Mm-hmm. And it was mind-blowing because if you think about it, YouTube uploads 300 hours of video every minute.
Yeah, that's pretty
mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, I wonder how much. Did you ask them about the Google relationship and like how much there's even the relationship there?
Of course I did, right? I had a 5-hour flight.
Yeah.
So, and we don't have 5 hours of podcast.
It's only a half an hour podcast, Rob.
But interestingly, he actually came from Google. He was working for them for the last, I think he had a 2 or 3 year stint with them before he came to YouTube. So that was another really interesting thing. If I could bring up one more point about that interesting conversation was all of their product teams are not mapped to some big enterprise standard of, programming, if you will, right? He goes, teams have this like self-governed culture all the way down to what methodology they align to. So he goes, so my team lead, she just came on board in the last 6 months, and she's moving us to Agile Scrum. But we were, some teams are doing Kanban, some, Kanban or whatever, and some people are just doing extreme programming. I mean, they've just they all have that ability to do what works well. So it's almost like they have a sub-team culture. Yeah. And what was really nice is he felt that his transition from Google to even YouTube, in terms of the company and how they make you fit into that transition, if you will, and the culture and the environment, he felt was very much the same.
So it's almost like a holacracy. It sounds like that whole holacracy kind of formula we were talking about, where it's peer managed. You've got your goals and your objectives, and it's you have to come together as a team and figure out how you're going to be successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. Yeah,
it's great.
You're clearly a smart person if you landed the job at Google and YouTube, right? So I mean, it's not like you're an idiot. You need someone to tell you what to do. But you just need.
You hit on such an important point. we have to, I wonder if half the time we just make too many assumptions that we have too many idiots, and we should look at it the other way around, that we have companies hire people and, you know, they're smart. So give them credit for being smart.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Joel Palmolive talks about this all the time, and I know we had him on the show early on, but you know, we didn't talk about this when he was on. He you know, he's got that philosophy, which is, you know, he's one of the things. He's not a fan of ITIL as much as he is with ISO, because it's like ISO just says set the structure up, and here's how you tell me how you're going to get it done. I'm just going to make sure you're doing it that way.
Precisely.
You know, I mean, you're smart enough to figure out how you're going to handle an incident and how you're going to record things and how you're going to track and measure it. I'm just going to make sure you do it. Measure
to the outcome.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and so it's funny. Yeah, and so yeah, you know, that goes a little bit to. So let me go to the Gartner topic for a second. Unless there was any other major highlights you want to talk about.
No, I mean those are the big ones. Culture.
Yeah, I'm sure that he wasn't flying first class in a couple of years at Google and a couple of years at
Man, I'm telling you, I was number 38 out of 64 on the upgrade list. It was going to Atlanta, and I was sitting in row 31.
Oh.
That's a whole other podcast.
Anyway. He was saving his money for some other kind of party. So at Gartner, right, the thing is there was this whole push on innovation, and they were talking about this concept called bimodal IT. Have you heard of this? Did you hear about bimodal IT?
No, I haven't.
I teased about it on Twitter. I called it bipolar IT, where you have to have one group, you have to have one focus of sustainability and operations, and then you have to have another that can act quickly and kind of, you know, be a little bit more risk averse. For the 3 days I was there, I was really like, we have to be both. You have to do both. What? How? You know, it didn't make any sense to me. It was just it was very academic, and I was really missing the point. Finally saw George Spafford, who's really bright, really intelligent. He broke it down, and he was just like, listen, in your infrastructure layer, if you make a major change, like a server or an architecture or a network, okay, you've got to be a little bit slower about that. You got to really think that through, and you've got to be a little bit more systematic, and that's where, you know, your more traditional ITSM process help facilitate that.
Right.
But above and beyond that, once you have that platform of sustainability and operational excellence, you are allowing other people then to run faster on top of that, where there's going to be more code changes, more iterative changes. And that's where you need more of the DevOps, which is taking ITSM and using it as a platform for running fast on it. And he did a great job in articulating that. And it's very interesting because when I spoke, I actually opened up my presentation. I said, does anybody here in operations feel like you just suck? Because all we keep hearing is how we're not innovative, we're not meeting the needs of the business, we're not getting anything done, and we need to step it up, and we need to become innovative if we're going to survive. We need to become this bipolar IT pace maker thing. You know, it was crazy. It was crazy academic talk for a little bit, but then it finally started to resonate and make some sense because George gets it. And he's really bright. But you know, what's interesting though is that my conversations outside of the classrooms or the trainings with people just in the hallways and whatever, a theme that they're all their biggest thing that they were concerned about was, guess what? What do you think they was concerned about?
And these were, who were, sorry?
Operations directors, director of operations, director of network, director of data center.
Keeping the lights on?
They were definitely concerned about keeping the lights on, but their biggest concern was, would they actually be valuable in an innovative role?
That's actually really good.
That's really good. I thought that was really good. And there was several people who said that to me. And I said, of course you would not be. No, I didn't say that at all. I told myself, of course you would be, right? I said, you know, again, going back to that, creating a platform, right? I said, so you just need to rethink how what you're managing adds value to the business.
Yeah, this is just, spot on, right? It goes back to gazillions of podcasts ago, back in the day when we were talking about the desktop guy becoming the productivity consultant.
Yes.
Reinvent, reshape yourself. You have relevancy because what you provide is that platform. And now you need to step up onto the platform and raise it for them a little bit more so that you're enabling the business to go higher.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my presentation was about. It was taking things like configuration management. That's an exceptionally complicated thing, right? It really is a science. And if you get pretty good at asset and configuration management, if that's your skill, and now you're worried because cloud and all these other things might be jeopardizing this foundation you've built around the assets that you've used to have ownership over and be able to touch. I told you, you're thinking about it the wrong way. You are an expert in relationship management and digital asset management. Release that stuff to the cloud, focus at a higher level, and then suck in the marketing people who have no clue about digital asset management, how things relate to each other, and go help them with the skills and disciplines that you have. Because they're screaming for that help, right?
Absolutely. They are. And you know what? On that note, I think one of the biggest disconnects is that people think that the marketing and sales view does not or should not connect to the operational or support view. And they are so incredibly intertwined.
Absolutely.
Because your operational or support view, if done well, that business service layer should be mapping straight to the sales guys, right?
Absolutely.
And that is so important. And
absolutely. Well said. Yeah. Yeah. So is, and I think some people are starting to get it, and I think that's why we're seeing the increase of ITSM as a value proposition now. I mean, I don't know about you, but I really feel like this year there are much better conversations with people who are more mature about where they want to go and where they want to be. And service management just kind of across the board is just getting so much more airtime, I think, at the executive level inside of organizations.
But do you think it's because, so if we look at the driving factors, is it that people are proactively recognizing the need for change or a shift, or is it because they're now being forced to evolve because they see their relevancy disappearing?
Yeah, they're always forced in some way, right? So either you're forced by a regulatory pressure, you're forced by a financial pressure, you're forced by competitive pressure, right? So yeah, they're always forced. I do think, though, they're forced because they see the need to evolve. To do more with the IT that you have, because IT runs every business, right? And it's like, what IT organization have you spoken to lately who doesn't just focus on P1s? So yeah. It's like, I think IT has now realized, like, we really don't have to worry about job security. In fact, bring on the outsourcers because I need a life, right?
Right.
So, I think we're getting to that point where there's so much put back into the value of IT that they're saying the only way for us to scale is we need more automation. We need a better understanding of the resources. But most importantly, we need to understand how work gets done in IT or how work comes into IT.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, some work comes into the service desk and some comes into the project management office and then some comes from executives directly. And then we have IT kind of coming up with their own initiatives and they may not be talking. So it's like, everybody's busy, but who asked for it? Where did you ask for it? What value proposition?
It's really managing that demand, right, and funneling it. And we now, I think, have the data. We have to learn how to take that data and make informed decisions, right? And how do we move that around and inform what we do? I think that's, if anybody is going to end up in the same challenge that most organizations are in today, 10 years from now, then shame on us, right?
Yeah, and that's a great point. For like one of the things that I mentioned in my presentation was, I think ops folks for the most part have become really good at resource, demand management and capacity management. I'm sure there's some people still struggling with it, but if you are, I think it's just a matter of getting the right folks, either as consultants or hiring the right people to get on board, because the tools are there, the techniques are there. Everything's there. So for you to do demand management and task planning, well, now take that to the next business level. Again, take that back to sales and marketing, and think about what everybody's focused around SaaS and cloud. That's such a chore, right? To try to figure out, our expansion models, and we're having those conversations weekly here at Landesk. With our growth in our business and the SaaS platform, it's like, okay, how much do we build ahead? But new technologies are coming out, so you want to just be just in time. So it's everybody's facing that situation. Ops folks have that experience.
It's golden.
Yeah.
It's relevant, right? As my dad would say, you're still using the skills of me as a mainframe guy.
That's right.
He sent me this long text about Windows Server, and I don't know. I was like, all right, Dad. He was very excited that it's all still relevant.
Did you write him back and say that Windows now produces Linux? And,
I should definitely I'll let him grow into it. Go down his journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
He still hasn't gotten over distributed computing.
Did I tell you I met your brother at Knowledge Conference?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Again, I met him before, but I saw him there. Yeah.
Seen my brother before we met. That's odd. That's crazy.
You come from a geeky family, I guess.
Yeah.
Your dad and your brother and
infiltration at all levels.
Yeah. So that was a Gartner conference. You know, I think it was just okay. You know, I have to say, you know, one of my best conferences so far. You know, over the past year or so, I think was SITS.
Wow.
I love the energy in the expo hall, and the sessions that I went to were, you know, pretty good. I mean, they were really good. You know, so it was good.
But hasn't Europe always been at the forefront anyway? Always ahead of us in terms of culture and adoption around service management. And at one point, you got to ask yourself, why is that still the case, right? And I think there's some geographical and, you know, the smaller community aspect that makes that happen a little bit. But, you know, even we've got some teams onshore here in the U.S. that have recently been seconded to Europe, to the UK. Yeah. And to hear their experiences and how the things they're doing, I'm like, I want to go over there.
Yeah, in some ways, but then in other ways too, I kind of find them sometimes still just a little bit too. What's the word for when you're a reigning empire that just takes over people without really caring about the outcome? So, you know, it's like this whole thing with the customer conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think here in the U.S. we're actually more advanced than Europe and other places with this customer conversation, because I really do believe that, you know, a lot of us in IT here have stepped back and said, wait a second, when was the last time you heard the guy making the fries say to the person at the cashier, hey, customer? No, it's the person on the other side of the counter that's the customer. It's the person walking into the restaurant that's a customer.
Right.
You know, and I actually had someone say to me, I said, you know, IT calling the internal business partner a customer is such a foolish. And they said, well, when you go into McDonald's, you know, you're a customer. I'm like, yeah, because you don't work there. You're just eating there. Mm-hmm. You know, but the IT people, you know, we all work in the same place. But, you know, it's those kind of more, I think there's still more fundamentalists that is still, I think the Europeans and those in the UK need to get over a little bit. They need to, you know, even the old IT service management concept, right? Like defining IT services in the service catalog. It's like, who does that and why are you still doing it? Unless you are a cloud provider, unless you provide mail. I mean, we're talking about you know, like you said earlier, it needs to go right to the business service, right? And I think we're more progressive here in the States.
Yeah, I would say in some ways. I mean, that goes back to the classic example from Mark when he, you know, kind of brought us all back to the story of the janitor at NASA, right? Who connects to the message that my job is to put a man on the moon, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
You know, and so, and I think that, and you're right. And I think a lot of it might stem, the reason why we do connect to that very well is that I think the likes of Silicon Valley and those types of environments where a lot of the big companies are, the startup companies are, it's second nature to them.
Yes.
They connect with that message so well.
Yeah.
You know, and that I think is what we should, you know, it should be natural. That you know what very simply who your customer is and what you're delivering to. It's a great thing to strive towards. So.
And when you see it within an IT person, it's such a different dynamic. You know, I don't see it a lot in higher ed, but I see it a lot in, you know, some areas like CVS. I think I've told the story before. You know, and I was sitting at a Network World conference one time. There was a guy from Harvard and a guy from CVS. And the guy from CVS kept talking customer, and the guy from Harvard kept talking customer. Well, the guy from Harvard was talking about like internal departments. The guy from CVS straight up said, I asked him, I said, who's your customer? He goes, the person coming in to get medicines, the person coming in to buy things. I said, that's awesome. That's exactly what we want to be focused on. You can hear it in his conversation, in his tone, when he talked about performance, when he talked about strategy, when he talked about security. You know, it always had that mindset that there's a person on the end of this process, you know, that's impacted.
A person and an experience that's waiting to be had.
Yes. Right. And that experience is going to either make that company win or lose, right? Succeed or fail.
Right.
So, you know, and I think that, you know, we are at that point right now with ITSM. that we have the capabilities to improve the user experience. We can improve the value, we can improve the warranty, we can improve the operation, the performance, we can improve the feedbacks, the surveys. All these things can help us really drive that, but we have to do it faster. And that's interesting to me why this Fusion DevOps thing is coming together this year. I don't know if you're speaking, I'm happy to be speaking at both, which I'm excited about. Because I really have been spending a lot of time on the innovation management, right? Because that's how I view things. There's service management and then there's innovation management. There are things such as demand and feedback and things like that that need to be managed like a process. And that data is going to help us, succeed.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's exciting, and it'll be interesting to see how Fusion comes together this year. I haven't decided whether I'm going yet because I'm trying to put anything more than a one-night trip due to the fact that I have a new baby out to like next year, but we'll see how long that lasts.
Well, hopefully we'll see you there for at least one night.
Exactly. So we'll give it a try. So teasers for our next cast, because I'm sure Mark and Matt would love to participate in this discussion around Axelos and their announcement on the cyber resilience best practice.
Yes.
And kind of deconstructing that a bit. Hashtag, what is it? Resilia? I don't know.
Resilia, yeah, I think that's the name of the product.
Kind of their product name. So that's so that I think we'll save that juicy tidbit to be deconstructed for the next podcast. But
awesome.
I did pay attention and kind of tried to sum up our podcast today in my top 3 cards. So know your customer. Just finished talking about that. Very, very important. Your people are smart. Approach your process design assuming everyone's smart.
Not an idiot.
And reinvent yourself, right?
Yes.
And we're starting to see that. So with that, hope everyone has a great weekend.
And that's how you hack business technology. Thanks everybody. Have a great week.